and welcome to A Dose of Wellbeing, the Pharmacist Support podcast. I'm Danielle Hunt, I'm your host for today. I'm a Chief Executive for Pharmacist Support, the profession's independent charity. We're delighted to bring you inspiring stories, tips and expert insights that help enhance your wellbeing and make a positive impact in your professional lives. The podcast is about supporting you, our pharmacy family, as you navigate the challenges of the profession. So today I'm joined by Melissa Cochran, our Wellbeing Development Senior Manager, to talk about the impact of mindful movement and yoga on mental health and wellbeing. So thanks for joining, Melissa. This is a really interesting topic and I know very little about it. I've never done yoga, and in my ignorance I always thought it just had physical benefits, but I'm really interested to hear about the mental benefits as well. So I'm really looking forward to this one. So just to kickstart, your background is counselling and psychotherapy. How did you get interested in yoga and movement and their impact on mental health and well-being?
Well, I started thinking about prevention of mental health issues and in addition to treatment at a certain point in my career. I suppose I'd always been interested in it, but I started to think about it more deeply. There was also a subset of clients who I had who maybe didn't respond to therapy or counseling the way you might hope. Mm-hmm. And I started to wonder if there might be other reasons for that. So I took a course. It was sort of how integrating a lot of well-being practices, mm-hmm. nutrition, yoga, meditation, all kinds of things into your practice and how this can impact mental health. I found that really interesting. I've done lots of research. I have a real interest in the mind-body connection. And I recently took a course on neuroscience and yoga and the treatment of trauma. So I think it's an interesting time to be doing this because research is coming out faster all the time. We're starting to understand the impact that these very old practices have on people. So, there might have been a period of time where people would talk about yoga and meditation. It was all a bit airy-fairy or woo-woo or whatever you want to say. And people didn't really believe it might do much. But I think we kind of know that isn't true now. That research is coming out. And I was very interested in finding other ways of helping people that wasn't just counseling and psychotherapy.
Oh, really interesting. So in terms of yoga, how do you think that helps?
It's interesting. There's things we know and things we don't know. So the great news is that the brain can and does change. Mm-hmm. So you might have heard of neuroplasticity. This is that the brain can form new connections and can reorganize old connections in response to experience. Mm-hmm. So, and activities that are done frequently and in short bursts create stronger pathways. So that would say that if you're doing a practice like yoga, which engages your physical body, so you're moving, but you're connecting it with your breath as well. You are using your brain in a different way. And that is creating new neural pathways. What it also is doing is connecting up areas of the brain that may have been disconnected.
Oh, right.
So if you're doing a practice, say every day or every couple days, that's great. You could even do 5 minutes twice a day or 15 minutes once a day, something like that. If you want to do shorter but more frequent bursts, this can be really helpful as well. There's another thing called neurogenesis, which I think is at play here. And this is where new neurons are being generated consistently. So neurons, what I just learned in my most recent training, and I didn't really understand before this, was that neurons can migrate to needed areas. Now, what I did know already, but this kind of helped explain it for me, is that for people who are very anxious, or maybe they have been through trauma or something like that, their amygdalas can actually be larger in size than they would be in the brain of someone who wasn't experiencing those things. So we can see that that our brains change over time, and they can change in that way to sort of be a more anxious brain, or it can go the other way, and the amygdala can reduce in size, and maybe you would grow your prefrontal cortex or something like that. So so this is great, and the brain can be rehabilitated, and a lot of this is based on how we're using our brains. So you might have heard the phrase, neurons that fire together wire together. So it's what you're doing all the time is creating those connections. So this is a way of creating positive connections that help you to calm down, that bring on board your parasympathetic nervous system state, which is the restful state. And I think it's really helpful for those reasons.
So I'm guessing there's more than just yoga that can help with that. So is there any other types of kind of movement or things you can do that can help?
Yeah, I think Tai Chi and Qigong are also, they're similar in that they're both practices that connect the movement and the breath. So I suspect that there's something to do with those combinations that's really helpful. So Tai Chi and Qigong are also practices that can be really helpful. But basically what this can help with is something called bottom-up regulation. So top-down regulation is when our frontal lobes, for understanding the situation based on accumulated knowledge and like they're online and they are helping us to understand our situation. So this might be, if you think about traditional therapy, you're talking your problems through, you're working them out. It's kind of an intellectual exercise, even though there's a strong emotional component. That would be considered a top-down approach. Okay. A bottom-up approach is where it's coming from the body. So if your limbic brain perceives muscle tension and fear, then your brain then interprets the situation as dangerous. So those signals are coming from your body and going up to your brain rather than starting from your thoughts and going down into your body.
Yeah.
So basically what these bottom-up regulation approaches are teaching our bodies to create a sense of calm, and then this then sends signals to the mind that everything is okay. And so I think Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga all do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about breath, because we talked about that when we spoke on one of our previous podcasts about the link to stress and how, doing breath work can really help reduce stress. So you can start to see the impact of these things, and I suppose there's the extra thing of the movement. So what does research tell us so far about kind of the link between doing yoga and the impact on mental health?
So studies started coming out consistently after about the year 2000, and there have been a little over 200 studies to date. Most studies have a very similar design. So they take a group, we're talking about trauma here because trauma is pretty well researched, but you take a group of trauma survivors, and one group is assigned to a yoga group, and the other one is assigned to some sort of control condition. So it might be, in some of them, it might be a social support group or something like that. And they measure the symptoms before and after the intervention. And the results consistently show that the yoga group is better off. I don't know that we 100% know the mechanisms for that, although that's becoming clearer all the time.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. And I suppose thinking about those wider benefits. So in my ignorance, really, I really thought about the main benefit of yoga being increased flexibility. I think that's a well-known benefit of yoga. I've started to hear a little bit about how yoga can impact our aging. So that's really interesting. And obviously it has wider health and well-being benefits. So can you talk a little bit more about the wider benefits other than just being a lot more flexible?
Absolutely. So you're not alone there. A lot of people think yoga is all about flexibility. Of course, that is a part of it, but that's only one aspect of yoga. So there's a great attention to breath work. You're also taught meditation skills in yoga classes. And so I think a big part of the benefit is syncing your breath in your body. And so that's teaching you your own regulation skills, which you can bring on board when you're having a hard time. And I think that's really impactful when we're talking about mental health and well-being. Having said that, flexibility can improve posture and decrease pain by addressing alignment. It can also decrease your risk of injury. And it improves communication between your brain and muscles, which could probably help coordinate movement, prevent falls, that kind of thing. Yoga is well known to increase blood flow and circulation throughout the body. And it also increases production of synovial fluid, which is the fluid that provides lubrication in your joints.
Right.
So I think flexibility in itself is helpful, but there's a lot more that's helpful that goes along with it. So for example, I mentioned posture, and it's come out through research that people who have a straighter posture actually tend to feel more confident and better in themselves. So I think even just that, looking at posture and alignment, can be a big benefit to people. If you think about it yourself, if you're sitting sort of hunched and defeated, it feels very different. You can feel it almost immediately doing it than if you're sitting up straight and your head is up and your eyes are, looking out. So all of these things are impactful.
Brilliant. And I know you practice yoga. Can you talk a little bit about the difference yoga's made for you?
Yeah, so I have been practicing about 7 years consistently. I dabbled with yoga a little bit before that. And I've seen changes in my strength, my flexibility. I definitely am able to use yoga when I'm going through difficult times. So I think it's probably helped with managing a stress response. My sleep is definitely better. And it's not just what you might think. It's not just sort of relaxing before sleep, but it's also that I sometimes would wake up with like pain down from my lower back into my right hip and into my right knee. And I'd been to physiotherapy for that. But what I found is that when I do 15 minutes of yoga before bed, I don't have that pain at all. And so that has increased my sleep. So it's in a couple of different ways. The breathing practices help, the meditation helps with sleep, but also just pain reduction, because it's really powerful for that. And another thing that I've really enjoyed is that I've made a solid group of friends through my yoga class, and we've been getting together for many years, and we still do, and that's really nice.
That's brilliant, because I know that social connection can have such a positive impact on our well-being, can't it? So that's great. So I suppose if people are listening to this and thinking about, right, I might want to dabble and have a go at yoga, but they might think I might not have the time. What do you think about how often someone should practice yoga? Should they be doing it every day? Do they have rest days? What type of practice does it look like?
I think it depends on the type of practice. So doing gentle yoga would probably be beneficial to do every day. You wouldn't really need to worry about having a rest day. Of course, you're always listening to your body. I used to go to a really rigorous yoga class, and it definitely was beneficial to have rest days in between. But right now, I do a type 15 minutes of yin yoga at night before bed. I think that can be done every day without a problem. You might want to start up smaller and build up a practice. For me, it was really good starting with a class, because I had a teacher who could look at my alignment, look at my postures, correct them, and you kind of embed in your muscle memory how to do these things then. So for me, it was really beneficial starting off that way with a teacher, and now I can do it at home, and I feel fairly confident in what I'm doing. But I think it's just really individual. What would work for each person is really different, whether it's going to a class or doing a few minutes before bed or whatever. I think it's very down to the individual.
Because you talk about doing it before bed. Is that an optimal time, or is there an optimal time for practicing yoga?
I think the best time of day to do yoga is the time that you'll do yoga. So
that makes sense.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, having said that, there are more energizing yoga practices. You probably wouldn't want to do those ones right before bed. Those might be more suitable for morning or afternoon. I like to do what's called yin yoga before bed. That's a relaxing yoga. And as I said, it really helps my back and hips for sleeping.
And that's really interesting, because in terms of habit forming, you do have to do it at a time that suits you. And if it becomes too difficult, I'm guessing you probably wouldn't do it. So
that's right.
That's really interesting. And I think that's my takeaway. You know, this can be done at any time, so you can fit it in. And I'm guessing, unlike other activities, you don't necessarily need lots of equipment to be a gym member. You can find ways to access yoga. So that's really interesting.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Melissa. You have really inspired me to think about yoga, particularly because you can do it anywhere at any time. And I think that's probably something that appeals to quite a lot of people. And I think that added benefit on mental health, reducing stress, will be really interesting to people. If, like me, you've found what we've spoken about today interesting, you can find further wellbeing information, videos and online content on our website. If you're a pharmacist, pharmacy student or trainee, you may be interested in checking out our workshops, The Science Behind Wellbeing and the Live the Life You Want to Lead workshop on our Wellbeing Learning platform. For further information on our support services, please click on the How We Can Help link in the podcast description. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you feel you may need support. We want to continue providing our free and confidential support services and continue to open up conversations like this. If you've enjoyed our podcast episode today, please consider making a donation so we can continue creating more support for wellbeing and mental health in pharmacy. You'll find a link in the podcast description or a QR code at the end of the video if you're watching this episode. Donations help us to continue to provide our essential support services. Thank you so much for listening today. We look forward to seeing you again on our next podcast episode.